Selamat datang kembali di wawancara eksklusif Boardgame.id di SPIEL Essen 2019. Bersama kita ada Bapak Joris Wiersinga yang juga seorang game designer dan salah satu board game yang berjudul Indonesia adalah salah satu board game terbaik di dunia. So it's nice to have you and it's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Joris Wiersinga. Welcome to Indonesian booth.
Thank you.
So I think let's start with very simple questions. We already know that you designed a board game entitled Indonesia.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I grew up in Indonesia, so I lived there from when I was 6 till when I was 12. I lived in Jakarta. Mm-hmm. So I always really liked, I have a bond with Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the game Indonesia was designed in Indonesia because I was traveling there, mm-hmm. and there I was going to catch a plane, but the plane did not go. And I was sitting in an airport, and I had nothing to do for 4 hours. So I was very bored, and then I thought, maybe I can make something nice about Indonesia. And so this was the first idea. Of course, with our games, it takes 2 years to make a game, but in that airport in Ujung Pandang in Sulawesi is where I first made the first ideas.
So that's the 4 hours delay that bring Indonesia game to life.
So it's very good that sometimes there are delays in planes because that's how games get made. Yes.
And sometimes it's good to have delay in Indonesia to get the information.
They do occur. Yes.
That's amazing. But what make you start quote unquote game design at the first place? Why you design a game? What for?
So I've always really liked games, and I made games even when I was a small kid. We would be, my father worked in projects, and they would have this large pieces of paper, like this big pieces of paper, and I would cut out all the different pictures from magazines, and I would make a game where you would have to go to the shop and buy all kinds of things in Block M in Jakarta, very close to Block M. So we would go there and you'd have to buy all kinds of different things. So even as a kid, I liked this. I liked playing games and I liked making them. And I've been doing that for a very long time, and now I do it professionally as well.
Wow. So you started since you are young, then,
yes.
And because the family also have like quote unquote playing culture and play together. Something
yes,
like
we had quite a number of different games. Some games really serious to teach something with words, for instance, or a little bit of mathematics in it, or negotiation, because I think you can learn really a lot from playing games. Others just purely for fun. And we would sit together as a family. I have 3 sisters. My oldest sister, she hates games because I always wanted to play games, and I made her play games all her youth. But now she has 3 children and they love games.
They love games. Now she's in a very bad situation.
And but my 2 younger sisters also, they really liked games. So we would play as a family with my parents and my sisters. And then also sometimes I would design games specially to play, because I like very complicated games, but my sisters are 6 years younger, so they could not play the complicated games, so I made simple versions of the complicated games to play with my sisters.
So you really like downgrade the game for the whole family so
yes.
they can sit down together.
Yes.
That's amazing. But for the sort, can you explain a little bit we call it like design philosophy. What is your design philosophy, Bahar?
So there are really a lot of different things you can do with games, and the games that we are famous for. So I own a company together with Jeroen Daumen that's called Splotter, and the games that we at Splotter are famous for are quite long, complicated games. They are mostly economic, so they are about running a business, or they are about running an economy of a country. And if we make that type of game, what we try to do, we always start from the mechanics. So we normally, with Indonesia, we started with a theme because I was in Indonesia, but normally we start from from a mechanism, an item, and then later we find the story. So some designers like the story, but we mostly like
the mechanics.
The mechanism, or the mechanic. And what we try to do is we try to find a mechanic that, a core mechanic that is not yet used so much. And we try to find a mechanic that is, we often find this by inverting something that is already there. So for instance, we made Chain Magnate, in which you are collecting cards. And it is like, we said we like deck building, like you have in Magic or Dominion, but we want to have deck building, but with a twist in a different way. So we kind of take a core mechanic of some game and we throw it on its head. And then it becomes something completely different.
Okay.
And then we add that to a kind of economic simulation, if you will, which for instance, in Chain Magnate, it is around where you can get something to eat. Very simple with streets, and then you can go through and get something to eat. Or with Indonesia, it is about the growth of having different goods produced on the different islands, and then you have to ship them all. And this kind of economic engine creates a background for the game. So you have a mechanism that allows you to do something, and you have something where the game actually grows itself, it does something itself, and then you have to react by playing with your actions. You have to interact with with what the game wants. And this means that there's always a kind there's often a kind of development in such a game that something is happening because of all the actions of the players. The game situation develops, and you have to react to that. And this is, in that sense, different from what many people do. That the economy of the game is not static. So sometimes you have a static board, but with us it's always very dynamic. It kind of self-balances and takes care of itself. As a player, you are. You're not just directly interacting with other players, but always through this idea of the economy.
I see.
And so in a way, this is how real life works, and that is why some people use our games also to teach about business sometimes. I played Indonesia with some very high up guys who were running big companies, and there's lots of mergers and acquisitions in it, and they were very good at it. And they said, oh, then immediately you can see how to do. And this is because you are not, in many games you're just doing something directly against your opponent, but here you're always doing something which impacts the economy, and then that has an impact on your opponent.
So, but what I feel also when I play Indonesia is that somehow you're able to arrange the mechanics and all that complexity in one very flowing sequence. How you do that basically? How you find that recipe? I mean that gameplay such a way that it's like flowing.
Basically playtesting.
Okay.
So we test our games really a lot. So normally we take about 2 years to make a game from when we start until it is there. And 2 years means lots and lots of weekends, getting people over, larger groups over, first in a very small group and then more and more people, to play and play and play and play and get everything out that is not good. And what we normally see is that we add too many ideas to the game in the beginning, so we kind of pile all the ideas, and we have something that is has a nice core but it's still messy. And then the game, the playtesting does two things. It balances, but it balances by cutting things away. So the game becomes simpler and more elegant over time. And it almost never works the other way around. So we start with a very simple mechanic, then we start piling a lot of we make like a big pile of mechanics and things, and then we cut things away until we have something very clear. And sometimes we lose the original mechanic.
So it's totally new.
Then it's completely new. And if a game fails, it is mostly because we also sometimes start games and we don't finish them because we have ideas and they're not good enough. If a game fails, it's mostly because we have some core mechanic, but then we cannot put the pile on. So everything we put on as extra ideas, it kind of drops off, and it's because it's very hard to add to certain ideas, it's very hard to add, and then you cannot make something nice and elegant. Because we as designers cannot make something elegant by building, only by making this big chunk and then cutting it.
Wow, that's very much unique approach in a way.
Yeah.